One, two,
Standing
go.
by. You know it.
Here we go.
Hey, everybody, you're listening to and possibly watching the Comic Book Bears podcast. I'm Bill Zanowitz,
I'm Steve Morey.
I'm Caleb Alexander McKenzie.
and we are your hairy, heavy homos that talk about comic books, but you don't have to be a hairy, heavy homo to listen in or possibly stream in. And want to wish everybody a very happy Pride Month. Happy Pride. Happy Pride.
Pew, 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 pew.
Brother, the trolls were out this
Yeah.
year. Oh, baby. Baby.
I mean, you know, when you feel like you're safe to do so, as well as to advertise yourself as a future capo, I think it really, brings them out in force.
Yeah. Well, there naturally is going to be, at least in the States, because we have to remember we reach people outside of the United States, but at least in the States, there is a sense of empowerment, which is pretty much false. And it's the same shit that you've seen every year. It's just there seems to be a lot more of it this year.
And
maybe there were more bots this year.
I was going to say a lot of it's bots. If you look
Yeah.
through it, it's the same comments being made by different things. It's just bots, and it's all the
Yeah.
same stuff. The subject matter is the same. I mean, the verbiage is the same. So there's a lot
Yeah.
of bots out there. Just be
Yeah.
cognizant of that. That's not a human with emotions behind that.
Yeah,
In a lot of ways.
and
but
some of
there's
them are
still-
so funny, with the classic. Well, you lost a fan. I was a lifelong fan, and you lost me.
Did you
On
you see
posts
where they
by
tried to get-
bands with openly queer band members.
Well,
I mean,
Okay.
Go-Go's and King's X. I mean, I was like, what the hell?
They tried that shit with I went blank on the name, but Rise Against.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm like, what part of Rise Against? There's two really great bands with the word against. There's Rise Against and Against Me. Neither one of them are on your team. Who did you think these people were?
3.
And Rage Against the Machine.
Yeah,
All the againsts are against all of you.
You.
You stupid.
They're the people they're raging against. They're the people you're rising against. They're the people that are you.
Yes. we have Gorkem Yilmaz.
Hey
and
there.
I
How's it going?
apologize if I mastered your name. I'm
We
sorry,
got,
but hello guys.
Yeah, and over
Yeah.
here is the kind of continuation of my Wolf of the Week 2 weeks ago. There's some really clever signage going on in New Jersey of backing the boss for Springsteen.
Yeah,
And
I can imagine.
Jersey MAGA, woo. I mean, it's its own thing because it's it's kind of, there's 3 pockets of it, and they were always weird, They were always weird, and man,
I got a good one for you, Bill. I'm gonna
Yeah.
enjoy this process. What's the difference between Jersey MAGA and Staten Island MAGA?
Okay, Staten Island MAGA, they are the ones that I would be worried about, how firebombing, because it kind of feeds each other. I mean, Staten Island's always been like that. It's always been the realm of conservatism. Jersey is a lot more bullshit talk, and I say that as a Jerseyite because it's really interesting because some of the most pugnacious areas are some of the most well off, I mean, I mentioned I'm from Bergen County. I'm from the lower part of Bergen County. You get to the upper part of Bergen County, like that's Saddle River and stuff. But we
Fancier.
all shared.
Fancier.
Anybody who's from Bergen County, even if you were well off or were just like regular middle class or maybe lower middle class, if you were in an area like Lyndhurst or something, we all have a very good work ethic, and I think that's because of immigrant parents. And everybody was like essentially from somewhere else, unless you were like the Lenape Indians. And the shore people, like the Ocean County people, they were always like that. They were always like that. I remember, I want to say like maybe 10, 15 years ago, was on Bradley Beach and enjoying the fireworks. And there's some fucking like witch of a woman, like why? And they were playing like, I don't know, like Tom Petty or something before the fireworks started. Why don't they play patriotic music? And then they started playing like patriotic music, and it still wasn't enough for her. So those are the people that are like Bruce Springsteen, who, and I've always hated him. Like they're fucking idiots. They always were.
Yeah, if somebody wants patriotic movie music played, I'm gonna play like Woody Guthrie, and that's gonna be about it.
Yeah.
And then I'm just gonna watch them squirm when I tell them what he's actually talking about.
Yeah. So there were always like the three particular pockets: the shore, Sussex County, and like the areas around the Pine Barrens, because there's nobody actually in the Pine Barrens.
Is that what makes it barren? Possibly.
Yeah. And
well, plus you know, it's all
a
haunted.
very good dumping ground for bodies from the
Okay, can I?
all that.
I'm gonna proclaim some ignorance, and this is from a guy growing up in Arkansas. So just keep that, like, have pity on me. I've always wondered what the phrase Pine Barrens was referring to. I was thinking barren as in like a robber baron, like these, like, so I was assuming that these were like some lumber pine people who owned all these companies in the land.
It's
like they
a huge area of undeveloped forest.
Okay, so it's barren in the sense of there's nothing there.
And it's mostly, at the time, it was mostly pine trees.
Okay, that makes sense. I've always been thinking about it as like, okay, it's the Pine Barrens because it's owned by a group of ultra wealthy.
Now I own all the timber.
It's with those mustaches.
Just like the Godfather.
But now that's all I'm going to think about, so thanks.
I want to be a Pine Baron now.
I am the Pine Baron.
Like, we can be Pine Barons, Bill. Let's pool our money and take over the lumberyard.
Yeah. Dude, if we pull our money, we'll have like an acre.
We can, if we pull our money, we can get a solid like sheet of plywood and maybe 2 2x4s. The price of lumber's up. It's
enough for sign. Enough to put up a sign. The Pine Barrens.
Maybe I am helping introduce the term Jersey MAGA into the lexicon. So maybe
it's a thing now.
Yeah.
Maybe.
But yeah, these idiots with the Springsteen comments. One hit wonder. Okay, like which of his 18 top 40 hits was the one hit?
Somebody called him a one hit.
Yeah.
Like, tell me you don't listen to like.
And I had a comment that got 170 likes. When somebody said like typical New Yorker, and I said, and it just said, dude, a Martian could tell you that Bruce Springsteen is from New Jersey.
These comments they're being made by like that person who votes for like Machine Gun Kelly as the best guitarist in the planet. Like that's who this is. It's that person.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Or I mean, I guess Kid Rock has to have an audience. It's,
well, Kid Rock and what's his face, who has sex with all the 14-year-olds, is known for having.
You're not limiting it as much as you think you are. That's still a very wide open field with this group of people.
But apparently,
famously crazy and libertarian. What is his name? Anyway,
right. Dude, I don't know who you're talking about. But there is that tour coming up, which is like the mini festival. Like one day Kid Rock headlines it, the other day Nickelback headlines it, and Nickelback are like being like pilloried in Canada for this. But apparently for the date that's in York, PA, they are having a real hard time finding security because they know it's going to be drunk fucks, and it's really interesting because like in the 80s, it was metal concerts that were the big,
and then it was
hip hop, and then it was hip hop. Now it's country. Like
Yeah.
I have
Yeah,
a
'cause
friend who
it's
works
all
security for like
douchebags.
charity concert, and he will not work any country acts. He just will not. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's like a
if you
Kid
want to
Rock,
wade through
Travis
puke,
Tritt
that's a good place
concert
to
coming
be.
up here.
Yeah.
Oh.
That same kind of crowd.
Yeah.
Fun, but
fun. But
we've
this is
got
a
other-
comic book show. It's not a
we've got
Jersey
other
Mike show.
comic book stuff to.
But before we get to that, you guys doing okay otherwise?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in a period at work where it's a lot of like hurry up and wait. So my days are strange, and will be for like another 2 weeks. So
That is not a problem
I'm a
I'm
bit
having
rested.
at my job.
Yeah, I'm a bit more rested than I was. So yeah.
What happens in 2 weeks, Bill? What's 2 weeks from now?
Well, it's just that that's interesting to say because 2 weeks from tonight we have to figure out the logistics of this. Steve and I will be together for Heroes Con Eve, so maybe we'll do a. Oh, dude.
Okay,
Dude. You'll be with us in a hot.
I'm being petulant over here. For those of you who are listening, I'm making that little funny face like you're mocking while your head's shaking. I don't get to go on this field trip. Would love to.
No.
I think I said last time, I may have been off air, but this kind of coincides with a major work convention that we have every year. And so we're going to have, a couple thousand.
It's the same thing with me with Baltimore. Why?
Yeah. So I've got that. Now, to be fair, it runs all the way up till Friday. And then I could, theoretically leave Friday night, get there on Saturday, and then leave Sunday again. But I don't want to do that.
You
so
don't
it's
want
just
to
not, feasible for me to go.
We'll have to work out the logistics because the next time you see us, if you watch us, Steve and I might actually be sitting next to each other.
We'll figure something out here.
We'll figure it out.
I've got another chair. Multiple chairs. Not that one, but I've got another chair to sit in that can do. But I mean that would be really fun. We were talking about that today, my husband and I, about seeing what we can do to make it easy for both of us to be on camera, which would be pretty cool. Mm-hmm. And then we'll feel sad that Kayla with us.
And I think even if I'm like next to you and I have the headset on and you're okay, we might not have audio issues. So we'll see how that goes.
We'll see.
We'll figure it out.
I don't know. It's a good mic. Usually,
we might have to squeeze really close together.
Yes, we can do. What is it? ASMR, just because we're smushed together.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some comics.
Challengers of the Unknown.
Oh, that'd be great. I love Challengers of the Unknown.
They're wrapping up the miniseries. It was very good.
What? Why are we whispering?
Nothing. Try tingles. We're trying to get those meridian tingles, man.
But as we said, this is a comic book show, so we're going to start talking about comics. We have just a very brief little bit that we're going to dedicate to some news. And as let's rewind that. If you follow us, you know that we've been covering the Diamond drama pretty closely. And there was some more Diamond drama this week. So, Steve, why don't you just kick that off?
Well, I mean, there was just a bunch. I mean, there was a great letter that went out. I believe it was last week. That was a response to a lot of the publishers that were pushing to get payments that they were owed. And Dynamite, of course, being one of the big ones with over, I believe, $500,000. I think, for just 2 weeks.
It was like 550,000.
Yeah. And they're really pushing for it, but what both the Diamond Company as well as Ad Populum came back with saying was that, well, if it was May 15th or earlier, then the Diamond bankruptcy company that's been formed, they will pay you at some point an amount. And Diamond, of course, is also... They've extended their credit line, so they have another $9 million credit line, so they can pay what they're owed through the bankruptcy, or at least as much as they can to creditors. But I don't really understand why having another loan's going to help them, because won't they have to technically pay that back too? I don't know. Anyway, it at least allows them to do some payroll and to close up some accounts. But I don't know the logistics of that. But if it was May 16th or after, then Ad Populum would be paying those invoices. Unfortunately, as of I think it was yesterday or today, companies are still not being paid for May 16th and on because apparently Ad Populum has not approved any payments to be sent for any inventory or any purchases or sales or whatever carrying costs that they've had since then. So now we've got about a month where people are not getting paid for their invoices, and that's
And
a
let's
problem.
also say that's something that's not uncommon in the first
Yeah.
stages of a company that is either
Absolutely.
coming out of bankruptcy or is a survivor entity. After a bankruptcy, we don't need to talk about business here, but
yeah. I
that's
mean,
not that uncommon. That people shouldn't
it isn't.
be up in arms about that. How long that goes?
Yeah, I was going to
that
say
might
it's the
be the issue.
longevity of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think in this one, it's kind of a bigger problem for some of those publishers, especially smaller publishers, because they've been going for quite some time
Yeah.
without payments.
Yeah.
You know, Diamond
this is
especially.
definitely going to kill a couple of houses without question. Yeah.
However, there, you know, thankfully there is another small independent sort of publishing / distribution model that's popped up, and that's the Filbo distribution. Filbo is a small, you know, indie publisher, self-publisher almost, but they are combining with a few other smaller publishers like Zenoscope, for example, to distribute through them. So that's, you know, that's helping some of those tiny publishers. Hopefully it will be something that they can do. But again, it's, you know, very small potatoes compared to the big ticket guys, you know, who really are dependent on a major distributor to get their material out, but then also to pay their bills for all of the print material that they've already shipped out. So that's one big thing. And then also, I think, Bill, you were talking about, you know, one of the, I guess it was a letter that was sent out just last month, but was again clarified about Marvel, Marvel comics being distributed and or not being distributed through Diamond at all going forward. Anything PRH really. That's been fully canceled. So if Diamond has anything that, or if people have ordered Marvel comics, Dark Horse, Distillery, or, you know, any of a number of those exclusive publishers that are currently assigned to PRH, as of June 25th, anything with a sell by or an on sale date of 25th or later, Diamond's canceled all those orders because they will not be getting stock on those. So yeah, it's a big change. I know there were still some holdouts that were trying to order as much as they could through Diamond, just to kind of go through the one-stop shop, you know, for distributor, or at least as much as possible, because you still have to use Lunar. But this just kind of kills that. So, you know, with no PRH distributed books available through Diamond going forward, then, you know, Diamond's really just, they don't have much. They really don't have much.
They really don't have much. Yeah.
Which is a disappointing, and I'm not really sure how.
But also with who has them now, given their distribution of product outside of comics, that might be where you see more activity going forward.
Yeah. And obviously this doesn't touch on, you know, Diamond UK. Diamond UK is still fine, still has all of those agreements with PRH. They're still getting everything from them. And there's no, you know, there's going to be no disruption to the distribution for anything that's being ordered through them, because Diamond UK is a completely separate entity. And then, of course, Universal right now, who was the other, you know, basically the other purchaser of the remains of Diamond. They are looking potentially, and apparently they've done this before, looking potentially into comics distribution into the US. So Ad Populum seems to be not really interested, or just not really unsure what to do. Universal might pick up the slack. I mean, obviously they don't have the warehouse. The warehouse went to Ad Populum. That's kind of one of the big reasons why Ad Populum made that purchase for the Diamond subsidiaries and the Diamond assets. And Universal's kind of been down this road before, you know, looking at as a Canadian company, like, hey, why don't we distribute? Because a lot of stuff is printed up here, so why don't we distribute it to the U.S.? But that's going to be an absolute nightmare when it comes to tariffs and the irregularities currently of cross-border trade, unless they had a U.S. warehouse, which again, that's a cost that right now they probably don't want to invest in. So who knows where that will go.
It would be a headache anyway. I mean, there's a reason they didn't do it before the tariffs were a problem too. Not saying that won't exacerbate that problem, but it's not easy to ship mass product in from a foreign country on things like comics and stuff. I mean, it's going to all have to go through customs. It's to some degree. I mean, it makes it harder versus if you've got a service here, you can have access to the interstate system, to the train system, to everything, and it just kind of flows from state to state. So, I mean, that's why it's hard to have those kind of those service lines in this sense, for especially like this kind of niche market. It's car markets. Yeah, that's great. They can do that a lot easier. There's billions of them. So
yeah, but print material, especially, being able to transport, warehouse, date sensitive print material, that's another major issue. Making sure that it's released when it's supposed to be released, when it's shipped when it's supposed to be shipped, that it's in the hands of the people who need it. I mean, we've seen over the past 25 years how difficult that was for a monopoly who had multiple warehouses at one point to distribute, was able to do. They weren't always on time, and their stuff was damaged very frequently, and all of that stuff. So, trying to break into a market as big as the U.S. with this is difficult. So starting from scratch, not really great. But also, as we've seen, starting from what's already there, also not really working very well. So we'll see.
Yep.
This
will make a great book one day.
I want to see this documentary.
It really would.
I really do. Yeah, this is gonna
be. I don't know about a documentary because it's so loaded that where do you put the focus on? But I do think a book that explores this would.
What would be cool? And I mean this legitimately. I'm not even being facetious. I really loved Shakin's Hey Kids comics series. It'd be cool to have a comic about this, in that kind of vein. I did that.
It has to be. It would have to be as irreverent.
I've poo-pooed the documentary. I've poo-pooed the comic series.
Bill hath spoken.
You just want to read that book.
Bill hath spoken. Well, hey, I
want to see pictures. I want to see moving pictures. That's what I want to see. I want to see moving pictures about this.
Speaking of, oh God, it's I'm not going to get into the Kingdom Come Blu-ray. I guess I'm not going to be a completist right now. But that's another story. But we have something that's much more positive to bring up in a new segment, and that's that they have announced the Eisner nominations. And Caleb, I understand that you've pulled up the information.
I do. I have a list. Now I'm not going to go through and read the entire list. That we have a podcast and we want to tell you about some really cool comics. But I love the Eisners. I love these kind of end of the year lists because it gives me a chance to peruse them. It's hey, I didn't know about this thing. I want to go check this out, especially on some of the niche ones. But also because doing this podcast and being in the comics world, we've gotten a chance to meet some of the people and to get to know some of the people. I mean, legitimately, personally, as friends that are on this list. And I love it because it's, and a lot of people hate the list, and there's, just like anything else with any other major awards, they have things to say about it. I get that, but I still like to see these people get their comeuppance. It is sad when people get left off, but the ones that get nominated, I'm excited about it. So a couple of things of note. I'm again not going to read the whole thing, but I do want to give a shout out in the best short story section. Spaces by Phil Jimenez that showed up in the DC Pride of 2024. That's in there. I thought that was super cool. Some really cool. Ice Cream Man gets a shout out for best single, and so we'll see how that turns out. But Bill, as far as the best continuing series, I think you'll really appreciate some of these. Department of Truth by James Tynion, of course. That's not unexpected. But Ultimate Spider-Man by Jonathan Hickman and Marco Cicchetto is on there, and I know you were a huge fan of that book. And then Wonder Woman by Tom King and Daniel Sampry's in there. Alan Scott got a nod on the best limited series, which I thought was great.
Since it is a major category, what were the full nominees of the ongoing?
Yeah, for sure. So I'll go through that one. Best
Yeah.
continuing series, we have Department of Truth by James Tynion and Martin Simmons. You have Detective Comics, which I think is really cool that it's on there. Ram V, Tom Taylor, Ricardo Federici, Stefano Raphael, and Javier Fernandez, Kristen Duce, March, and Mikkel Janin. Fantastic Four, Fantastic Four, the current one, by Ryan North and Carlos Gomez, Ivan Fiore, and others.
I haven't read one issue of it.
Yeah, I just that surprised me.
Yeah,
I'm not
that's
reading it, so I can't say. But
Yeah.
who knows? Santos Sisters by Greg and Fate, Graham Smith, Dave Lamberger, and Mark Kapranoff. I haven't read that. I know some folks who have, and they really spoke highly of it. Ultimate Spider-Man, which I mentioned, and then Wonder Woman, which I mentioned.
Okay, cool.
Best limited series, also a major one, so I'll go through those. Alan Scott, The Green Lantern by Tim Sheridan and Cian Tormey got the nod. Animal Pound, which I loved, Tom King and Peter Gross. The Deviant by James Tynion and Josh Hickson, which I have not read. Helen of Windhorn, Tom King and Bilquis Everly. Rare Flavors, which one of my best favorite books of last year, Ram V and Felipe Andrade. And then Zatanna, Bring the House Down by Mariko Tamaki and Javier Rodriguez is on there.
Oh, that's interesting. It's unexpected. But I did like it.
I thought that was great. Made me happy. Best new series, you got Absolute Batman, you've got Absolute Wonder Woman, Minor Arcana got on there, which is the Jeff Lemire thing. The Pedestrian, which I haven't read. The Power Fantasy by Kieran Gillen and Casper Wingard, which I thought was fantastic. Uncanny Valley by my buddy Tony Fleece. Love that for him. Dave Wachter, a great friend of a lot of us, got on there. I thought that was awesome. And of course, there's longer lists, and about different types of, graphic novels and best kids edition, reprints, yada yada yada. But just getting down into the meat and potatoes, where we actually talk about the creators, you have Tom King, Ram V, Kelly Thompson, James Tynion, and Jean Lun Yang as for best writer. So that's the lineup for that. Charles Burns, Emil Ferris, which I love, John Macy, Paco Raca, Oliver Schwan, and Maria Sweeney get the best writer artist list. Penciler Inker or Pencil Inker team, you've got Felipe Andrade on Rare Flavors, Nick Dragata for Absolute Batman, Bilquis Everly for Windhorn, Manu Larsenet for The Road, which I also loved. That was a fantastic book. Javier Rodriguez for Zatanna, Bring the House Down. Lin Yun Pham for Lunar New Year Love Story. And then, it goes on and on. There's a best cover artist list. Best colorist is Jordi Belair, Mateus Lopes, Justin Prokowicz, Javier Rodriguez, Dave Stewart, which is no surprise, Quentin Zutton, and it goes on from there. And so I just, again, I love this. I love seeing the categories. A lot of these folks we are used to seeing. I mean, who could have guessed that James Tynion and Tom King would be nominated for Eisners? Who would have known? But some of these other folks, like you said, there are surprises, and it is cool seeing. I haven't read it. It's cool seeing Fantastic Four on a best of. That's not happened in a long time.
It's like burn.
Yeah. That's not there hasn't been a really great Fantastic Four book. So, that was neat to see. I think that's there's very little Marvel on there, which I think really says a lot. And I like seeing Detective Comics also get a nod. That's cool. So, I'm not. We'll keep you updated on who wins. We'll come back. It's always a fun event at that's literally what I pay attention to in San Diego, and that's it. I really don't look up any of the other news clips. I could care less most of the time, but I do look out and I try to pay attention to Eisner noms. It's just lots of fun.
That's awesome. It is always a surprise, and like you said, we're seeing some of the same names, from the past couple of years. But I think that happens every 5 to 10 years. There's a crop of
they're superstars. They're
regular nominees.
Yeah, they're great. They're great at what they do. I mean, there's just no denying it. So you cannot read, even if you're not just beloved to the subject matter. You cannot read James Tynion's work and not think, this guy deserves to be thrown gold medals. He does. Tom King does.
Just not very hard at his head. I'm sure that's very painful.
Whenever I look at this, there's always that one or two books that I've always dragged my feet on.
Yeah, these lists really they punch my wallet because I'm gonna start adding stuff to the cart.
Thorn, the complete proto bone college strips from Jeff Smith.
Mm-hmm.
drag my feet on that.
Did you say Helen of Windhorn first?
Who?
Helen of Windhorn. I'm not sure if you guys have been dragging your feet on that one because I've been following it. I absolutely loved it.
I read the.
I know
first
there's still
issue.
more. There's still more issues that I need to find, but I think I have the first maybe 6 or 7, 6 issues.
I read that first issue, loved it, and decided I wanted to read that kind of in just a meaty chunk. So I've been sandbagging on it.
And
it's great.
Just looking at some of the other things, I guess I'm on some kind of second mailing list. So I did read digitally Plain Jane and the Mermaid by Vera Broskall, which is on the Best Publication for Kids, and that's really good. that was really good. Okay, cool. All right, we got the news out of the way, and we're ready for some funny book talk.
Let's do it.
All right, we always start with the big two when we can, when it makes sense. So I will take this baton, throw it at Steve. He's just caught it. There you go. And talk about a book that has a very familiar title, though it's not.
Yes.
But might immediately come to mind.
Yeah, so it's a very familiar title, and also the main cover is also very familiar to I think most people, at least in an homage form. And that, of course, is the new Giant Size X-Men #1. So, like the original Giant Size X-Men #1 did come out 50 years ago in 1975 by Dave Conkran and Ed Wein.
I had it.
Len Wein, not Ed Wein.
It did not survive childhood, but I had it.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine that people who read it when it was coming out would have been really shocked because it was the first original X-Men story in several years because X-Men had just
there were appearances. The Beast had a short run in Amazing Adventures. There was Marvel Team Up. They appeared in Professor X appeared in Defenders. There was a Human Torch Iceman team up in Marvel Team Up. There was the Spider-Man X-Men when they actually had street clothes because I guess they just like took a nod from the Mod Squad or something that doesn't really work when one of your friggin' guys has wings. And Captain America, they made appearances, but from 70 until this, it was slim pickings. It was reprints and that was it. Pretty much
for like what's it,
anything
30
that was
issues
actually
worth,
in a book called X-Men. So
yeah, it was like 30 issues worth of reprints essentially in the X-Men book itself proper. And so what they wanted to do this year, and this is actually the kickoff for the summer, sort of like a summer annual event. Instead of having an annual event, they're just doing the giant size thing. It's essentially the same thing. They're starting with Giant Size X-Men #1. They're continuing with Giant Size Dark Phoenix Saga #1, and so on and so forth. And they're all essentially the titles are all major X-Men events of the past, which is the theme of the Giant Size crossover event this year. So in this first issue, as soon as we, bring up, here's the, for those of you who are watching, the original Giant Size X-Men #1. This is actually a reprint or a facsimile edition that they just came out with this year. You can tell by the price. $4.99 in 1975 would have been laughed out of the door. Nobody would have been able to afford that. But here's the new issue. So this is what the new Giant Size X-Men is. So it's the exact same cover style. So you have the same image here of the old X-Men acting in surprise as the new X-Men are coming through, like ripping through the pages in that great homage there to Dave Cockrum. But the difference here is that Miss Marvel is front and center, and she is actually the essentially the glue that's holding this crossover together. She is finding herself thrown through time to these different major milestone events within X-Men's history. And part of the reason why is that in the far future, or at least in one of the far futures, an Ascani outpost is being destroyed by some unknown force. It looks like a little hag in a cloak. They're not really sure, but obviously whoever this is has an immense amount of power. And not to spoil too much about it, but it's Legion. Or at least the body of Legion. David himself, the original persona or personality of David is gone somewhere. And the only ones left in the body are his other personas, his other alters, who have taken over his body and his powers, which, are generally ill-defined, but mostly reality warping or extremely destructive. And in this case, that's what happens. He's very destructive, kills everybody at this outpost. But the reason he's there is because they have obviously time travel technology, and he's going to use it to change history. And in his mind, for the better, or in their mind. I guess it's their mind at this point because of, the multiple personalities there. But in doing so, he also, for some reason, pulls Miss Marvel along with him. Miss Marvel in our present is then pulled back in time to Westchester, New York, many years ago, which happens to be on the eve of Cyclops coming back from the X-Men's foray into Krakoa, where his team, consisting of Jean Grey, Polaris, Havoc, and I believe Beast as well, were captured and believed dead. So Cyclops he's back in Westchester. He's like, I need help. I need to be able to save my friends. Kamala shows up. She appears out of nowhere and is able to identify where she is, because she's a big super nerd and she knows all about X-Men history. And she comes up to Scott and she just hugs him. This Scott knows her because of the New Champions. In the New Champions, the teenage X-Men from the past, or at least one of them, the Scott Summers of the past Cyclops, was part of that team and was able to retain his memories of being on this team in the future. So Kamala, he sees her and he immediately recognizes her, and they share a moment together. But of course, she's there to help him get through this first transition of the X-Men. So she's introduced to all of the other new X-Men. She's introduced to Professor X, and she goes with them in the Blackbird to go to the Krakoan island. Turns out there that that is David's or Legion's target, is the island of Krakoa. He's trying to destroy the island. And the X-Men themselves think that the island is monstrous until Miss Marvel says, no. And she talks to the island in Krakoan and just basically says, hey, you know what? We're going to be your friends. You're going to be your home. You need to save yourself. Go up to space. You'll be okay. Things will be fine. Which is retconning or, changing history, because that's not exactly what happened before. Krakoa was kind of like this evil island for a while. But she basically tells him, no, this is good. We need Krakoa out of here. We need to protect this island. They're not evil. They are actually, you're going to be your future home. And she's able to thwart Legion. And of course, this is just the first step. She's then pulled away into another timeline. The next one is going to be the Dark Phoenix saga. So it's really interesting. I like how they're doing this. People don't seem to be, or at least the characters don't seem to be too nonplussed about the fact that she's coming from the future and kind of spoiling things, which is fine. I mean, Miss Marvel is a super comic book nerd who has, encyclopedic knowledge of everything that's ever happened to all these super teams. And so, coming in there, she's being used as an asset and is actually helping things and not hurting things or trying to, change history in a negative way. Not sure if that's just the way that we're playing it in this first issue or if it's going to continue. But I think that it was fun. It was Jackson Lansing and Colin Kelly on writing duties here. Adam Kubert on art, and Laura Martin on colors. They did a beautiful job. It's fun to read. It's colorful. It's dynamic. It's cool. They get early Wolverine pretty well. Idealistic and goofy Colossus, and very serious Kurt, and all of the stuff. Like, all of these characters are in their 1975 forms. But she seems to get along pretty well with all of them, or wants to be friends with everybody, and they kind of indulge her, which is fun. It's fun to see. But we'll see how that plays out in Dark Phoenix Saga, because I don't think anybody was in a good mood for that one. The other interesting thing, because this is essentially an annual, there is a backup story, and it introduces a new character who, in perfect X-Men fashion, met Charles Xavier way back when, and then wiped his mind so that he does not remember ever meeting her. The character's name is Justina LaGuardia, who is a Roman police officer, detective, whose mutant power is that whoever she is encountering, she is the better version of them. So if she,
when you say Roman, do you mean like Romany, like Gypsy, or
Italian?
Oh, Italian. Okay.
In Rome, she is from Rome.
Okay.
She's an Italian from Rome, but she has the mutant power of being better than whoever she's against. So whatever their power set is, but better.
Anything you can do, I can do better.
Exactly. And so when Professor X shows up, he doesn't realize, he thinks he's the most powerful telepath on the planet. She's like, well, no, you can't be, because my mutant power means that I am always better than you. And so she basically controls his mind, wipes it, and then says, I will return to you, because it seems, as I've read your mind, you seem to turn children into terrorists. So I'm going to find a way to come back in the future and stop you. So setting her character up for a future crossover or whatever storyline.
I want to root for her, but the fact that her mutant power is one-upping everyone makes me instantly hate her.
Exactly. That is her power. When they're sitting around telling stories about like injuries they've had, her injuries are always that much worse.
Yeah, just like
it took that much more to recover from.
I do want to say, it's just like you were showing us that one page that had just like that kaleidoscope of colors. The first image, yeah, that one right there. And I was going to ask you who the colorist was on this book. I mean, Laura Martin just brilliant. I mean, like the colors on this just pop. They just stand out so well.
Well, and when they get to the and I don't have a picture of it here. I guess we could probably check the cover art. This is just kind of an example. These are very colorful costumes that she gets to play with, and even Miss Marvel gets her own sort of like 1970s style X-Men outfit for this. But I mean, this was a fun chance, for redesigning the X-Men back in the 70s. Just giving them all these interesting characters, these mostly new characters. Some of them were new, obviously, some of them weren't. But just presenting them in a very colorful way. It's very worldly. They're international. They represent all sorts of things. You've got Nightcrawler is all blue and wears red and black, and then you've got, Wolverine with yellow and blue. Which Can
you just imagine the screams of go woke, go broke, or all that bullshit if Giant Size X-Men, the original, had come out today? Like, you think about the characters in that book and who they were and what, like, can you just imagine that coming out? Like, that came out when it came out. Imagine if that had came out today.
I mean, I'm sure there were people who were pissed off about it then. But at the same time, they didn't go out of their way to make the characters at that point, at that early stage, to make them as different as you would expect them to be. So they played into stereotypes a lot. Piotr's in the original, he's like, "Oh my goodness, I've never had clothes this beautiful before. I am poor Russian serf, or whatever." There's a lot of that's kind of played up. Because this is early comics, right? This is 70s comics. There's a lot of stereotyping to get these characters, so you can understand who these characters are very quickly, right?
I think we would have the best time doing like a staged reading of Giant Size X.
I just
number
would
one.
love it. I
Yeah.
want that. I want Steve to do the rest of the show in Russian surf voice.
It's gonna go into like Kurt Wagner's German, probably very easily. It's like, which one's talking? We don't know. But yeah, I mean, I think at the time, but then over the years, obviously Chris Claremont and there was a lot of work done to flesh out these characters beyond the the initial stereotyping, the initial archetype. So in the 70s, they probably would have been like, oh look, here's
Well, I can say, as somebody who was in the 70s and read this in the 70s, the thing that leaped out more than anything was Dave Cockrum's sense as a fashion designer. I mean, there was something and then he went a little crazy in some other stuff at Legion, and then Grell really went crazy in terms of Disco Legion. But it was a new dynamic. It was something very new.
Yeah.
You had, flashes of it in the past, like, the gorgeous design for Wonder Girl and some of the Supergirl redesigns, but that you had 4 new characters that looked amazing, and looked vibrant and were not. It was something new. Let me put it that way.
Well, and even Wolverine, who had made appearances before. I mean, here, or at least in in the original Giant Size X-Men #1, he looks better. His costume's been designed in a way.
The mask is different.
Yeah, it's a different mask. There's more.
It's a much better colorist. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
There, and just Cochrum's use of posing. When they stand like this, and it all works. Yeah.
I wish I could find this one in a much bigger picture, but essentially this is the introduction to everybody, and they're all posing in very much the same way. The dialogue's slightly different, of course.
Power pose.
Yeah, that.
Now all I want to do is do a stage reading,
a dramatic reading.
Yeah, with Storm,
tonight a dramatic reading.
They will feel the wrath of the elements. Storm, we asked.
Storm. Anyway, I mean, yeah. But in any case, I would recommend picking this up, and obviously, if you're a fan of like those annual crossovers that Marvel used to do regularly, like Clockwork and the late 80s.
God, this could be so cool.
90s.
Like Banshee would be like, "Oh, be gosh and be gotta."
I want Mateo to do the voice of Storm.
Storm, yes,
yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
that would be Mateo Lane. Let's stop. Yes. Anyway, cool. But yeah, that's what I got for my Marvel.
I would hate to ask Mateo and friend who their 3 favorite X-Men would be, depending upon where they would go, given the video that came out today.
Oh God!
Oh God! I laughed so hard.
World Pride. That was the one with the Marshals for the World Pride.
Marshals for the World Pride.
Like John Benet Ramsey,
Terry
Schiavo, and Jessica, the little girl who fell
from the well.
I haven't seen that. What the?
Oh, you gotta see it. And Nick is just he's not after
paying
what
themselves
like, I'm
laughing.
gonna pee.
Yeah.
It's really
Brilliant.
I have not seen that. I need to go find this.
Only on a podcast like ours will we make bridges from X-Men into Annie Get Your Gun and Mateo Lane.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, all good. But yes, Bill, because we're gonna do something kind of strange and unusual. We're going to go to you next.
Yes. So DC's their Power anthology, which is their African American Pride equivalent, that usually comes out, during Black History Month. This year it was Rise of the Power Company, and this was a very loose narrative around Josiah Power, who was the former leader of a superhero team called the Power Company. And this also ties in with Gay Pride because Josiah Power was an openly gay man. And what his backstory was is he was a very successful corporate lawyer, incredibly successful. However, he was affected by the metagene bomb that happened in Invasion,
Yeah.
and years
Okay.
later, it was dormant, and then it kicked in while he was actually in court. So his career as a lawyer was over, but he was very wealthy. He was very smart. He knew how to get the best out of people, and he decided from that point on he was going to, form a superhero team, but it was going to be very much like a lawyer, like a law firm.
Hmm.
The more seasoned heroes would be the partners. The more junior heroes would be associates, and they also had like kind of their support staff, if you want to think of secretaries and
Clerks and interns.
paralegals. Yeah. Uh, so this was a concept that started in 2002 and like an 18 issue run. um Kurt Busiek was the writer. Tom Grummett, I think he was the artist through the entire run, but I don't want to put a hands of Bible on that. So that was the world we were at in 2002. We're in 2025 and things are different. So what does this what's covered here? Well, again, it's a series of short stories with African American characters from DC's canon,
Mhm.
all around a framing story about Josiah Power, whose nephew was killed in the Absolute Power event. So the world that they're in right now is the Justice League is reformed. Most of the world is very happy about this development. But what Amanda Waller bred was this suspicion and hatred of metahuman figures. And just like the X-Men, where you use the analogy of the anti-mutant activity towards stuff that was going on in the real world, we have something very much like that right now. Yep. Thank you, James. Yep. He said, and maybe if you can chime in, do you know if Grummet was by Prentice Rollins and Steve Sadowski? There you go. Thank you. Ask and I shall receive. Um, so, where this is at the end of the book is that Black Lightning and Josiah Power, who have never met before, decide they're going to form a new power company to specifically address the issue of the hatred that is being leveled against metahumans. So that leads to the power company recharge number one. And Steve, you had the graphic there, so it's a little better if you want to show that off. And this is a kind of getting the team, getting the band together. And you'll see in this case, they have, five of, I would say, the most prominent African American characters that DC has, with Black Lightning and Vixen, the Jace Fox version of Batman, and the Signal, Duke Thomas. And Duke and Jace find that they are a natural team. They are absolutely in sync. So they've been going on missions together. And Jace, through some of his friends like Bluebird, um, they developed this network where they were kind of, reaching out to people who, may have been metahumans and, are getting in touch with these powers. And one of the people that he got in touch with was this teenage kid. And um, what the beginning of the story is, and Steve, if you can go to some of the graphics there. um First there's Batman. There's nothing wrong with an artist's, giving a Batman splash page for income down the road. But what happens is, right at the beginning, is this teenage metahuman, and his parents are murdered, and they're murdered, you know quite horrifically. And there appears to be links to this murder and the anti-metahuman um, bigotry that's happening right now. So, in keeping with the grand tradition of Batman has to be a bit of a dick, um, so Jace Fox, he's wants to find this out, but he's very resistant to being part of this team. But since he's already here in Atlanta, and that naturally has some real world connotations. They are going to let him take the lead a bit, and it's mostly Vixen and Signal that assist him on this particular mission. They find that there is a anti-metahuman that's behind at least some of the communication with that happened with this particular murder, and he's taken the guise of Agent Liberty, which, if you know the Supergirl TV series or Passing the Superman, is effectively a very ultra right wing concept of somebody that is effectively anti-alien, anti-metahuman. They discover, though, that this version of Agent Liberty is African American himself. And that throws a lot of different nuance. But let's face it, there's blacks for Trump. That's the world we live in. This probably would happen. So at the end of the issue, they are going to be a team. I'm perfectly. I would not bet against myself in a wager that we will see a Power Company #1 of a mini series before the end of the year. That they're going to go forward as a team with Batman as an ads needed member. Because as we say, if you have Batman on a team, he's got to be a dick in some fashion. So this book was written by, I should have had this up, Brian Edward Hill, but it is also with a series of artists, Carrie Rudolph, Aletha Martinez, Norman Rapmund, Ray Anthony Height, and the Studio Sky Tiger. One thing I have to say, though, is though there are 5 different pencilers involved in this, it had a very cohesive artistic feel. It didn't feel like you were jumping, like from something like a Paul Pelletier to a Sienkiewicz. There wasn't that kind of shock in that. It was I thought, a very smart move, and using this as a vehicle in this particular day and age to address bigotry of something. Like I said, this felt very X-Men. This felt very X-Men in what they are going to be tasked with. And, the end of the story, Vixen says, we can stop them hurting us. I don't know if we can stop them hating us. And having that as the opening plateau, I think is, I think there's a lot of potential storylines that could grow from that. So for something that I was like, I mean, of course I was going to get it. It's DC. Wasn't exactly top of the stack. I enjoyed this much more than I thought, especially because this was a bit disjointed. This was much more unified and focused. So, Power Company Recharge #1.
Bill, were any of the Milestone characters, did they show up in either of those titles?
No, they can't use them. No, with Milestone, it has to be a Milestone book.
Okay.
There's they,
because DC is publishing Milestone.
Yeah, but DC doesn't own those characters.
Okay.
So they they do negotiate with when they the main characters, I would say right now, that are used even outside of comics are Rocket and Static.
Yeah, Static. And I read most of the new Static, most of the new run of Static, and I thought it was great. I thought it was very
so those have to be negotiated away. I mean, they might make appearances, but when it gets to reprint rights, I can understand why they might want something a little streamlined. Yeah,
that makes sense. Okay.
Yep. Cool. And it was nice to see bigger characters of a certain type together, Yeah. And just reinforcing that Batman has to be a dick, even if it's not Bruce Wayne. That was kind of cool too.
You put on the suit. You just gotta, your personality takes a hit. Just bedside matter goes out the window.
But there's really nice things about it. How Vixen's kind of the peacemaker, which perfectly makes sense with her foundation and all that, and also just this new Batman and effectively Robin finding their strides and seeing just how natural they work together. There's some really nice moments in here.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool.
Okay, so we've bogarted stuff, so we're going to give the baton to Caleb to talk about 2 books that he has. So why don't you take it away?
Yeah, so I'm going to be on Indie Island, so to speak, this week, or as much as Indie Island as you can be on if you're publishers like Fantagraphics and Drawn and Quarterly, but those are the publishers that made the two books that I am going to talk about. And one of them, and the one I'll talk about later on in the show, was anticipating, and I'm a big fan of this creator, and I was really looking forward to this book and loved it. Great, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. But the other one was more of I happened to be looking online. I think from either, I don't think it was DCBS, it may have been DCBS, but happened to see this like suggested, read the synopsis of it, and I was like, yeah, I'll give it a try. I don't know the creators very well. I don't know, the writer or the artist. I'd never read much of their stuff. So, but I liked what the pitch was, so I grabbed it. And serendipitously, I actually love this book. It's probably one of the better books I've read this year. Actually really fell in love with it. And this morning when I was at the gym on the stationary bike reading this, and it got me all misty eyed, I was kind of just like, what the hell? Why am I crying on the stationary bike?
Well, and you had to let us know too, because I was like,
yeah.
You know that it's a good book when you're like, I need to say something.
Yeah, I immediately
I
had to go to my phone
people.
and I posted about it online. And I was just really happy with this book. But what is this book? You probably are asking as I'm burying the lead here. And the book is called My Fairy Godfather. It is published by Fantagraphics Underground. And it is written by Robert Mailer Anderson and John Sack. Now, as I said earlier, I'm not super familiar with either of those creators. I've heard of the writer. I've just never read anything that the writer has written, if that makes sense. So I had to go check it out and look it up to see what this individual has written. And it turns out, I was looking at it, is the best-selling writer of a book called Boonville, which came out, which I think is a prose novel. I'm not familiar with it. But Robert Mailer Anderson is been nominated for a Grammy. Like, I was just like, okay, that's cool. And as a big time advocate, an activist, and that makes sense. But that's not necessarily what endeared me to this book. What endeared me to this book was a really heartfelt, compelling story that I read during Pride Month, which in the backdrop and the context of everything Bill was speaking about earlier, which is the environment that we live in as queer people, as gay men, and stuff. Especially me in rural Arkansas, seeing the comments that Bill was talking about, seeing online, I didn't know what I was going to get with this book, and it really hit me where I live, so to speak, and I really appreciated that. So, the story's main character is this young girl, this young high school age girl, and her name is Billy, and Billy is from Austin, Texas. Unfortunately, Billy's parents are killed in a pretty terrible car wreck, and Billy is, in essence, orphaned for what it were. That's the way she feels. And Billy has an aunt and uncle by blood that are very Texas, right? A very driving the F-250, ball cap, goatee, probably has a joint Facebook profile holding a fish up. And then Billy's has an uncle that's not a blood uncle. It was her parents' best friend that, from college. And his name is, literally, his name is Adam. And he's her godfather, right? And he lives in a place, called Liberal, Kansas. Now, if you're a film buff, if you may recognize that, if you know some history especially about a certain, film that features men behind the curtain and Wizard of Oz, all that fun stuff. That's kind of the real town of Liberal, Kansas has adopted that as being like the birthplace of Dorothy. And so it's interesting. There's a whole, history, and you can look at this up on the internet, like it's a whole thing. But that's where Adam lives. And Adam, again, is her godfather, best friend. Well, her parents, in their will, they signed custody over to Adam. Turns out Adam is a gay man. Adam is a gay man with a partner named Steve, because, of course, Adam and Steve. But just kind of a funny nod to that. But he is living in Liberal, Kansas, which in real life has a population of about 18,000 people, right? It's a very small town. And he is running a little 2-screen indie theater that his parents left to him. He's just trying to keep this alive, and he does regular showings of all of these, a lot of classic cinema, which really gives John Sack, the artist in this, an excuse to draw a whole lot of pinups of and homages to some really amazing famous people. Molly Ringwald being the one everybody clocks because she's on the cover of this. But that's what he does. He's operating, him and his boyfriend, not husband, but partner, who doesn't live together because small town and it's dangerous, and they're not able to do that, or at least they don't feel like they don't feel safe doing that. they are operating this together, and they're trying to keep it afloat in a very small town in Kansas that, although the name of this town is liberal, is anything but. It's very conservative America. It's very Midwest, very, very MAGA. And so they're trying to do this. And everybody, obviously, their world changes when Billy comes to live with them, much to the chagrin of the aunt and uncle, who are, again, do not like queers, do not think that gay men should be raising a child, do not think gay men should exist, for lack of a better word. And they're upset that their family would not give her to them, but they have to come bring her and drop her off. And this is a dynamic shift, right? She has not spent much time with Adam, her uncle, and is coming from Austin, which is a liberal city deep in the heart of Texas. And so she's very young, female empowerment. I went to a high school in Austin, Texas. I know queer people. I believe that Black Lives Matter. I'm gonna wear T-shirts with I don't know. I went blank. I was my brain completely shut off. The artist who draws lots of flowers that look like fallopian tubes. I mean, just that's just who she is as a person. And so she's pretty okay with living with Adam, but she's trying to get used to living in liberal Kansas, the conservative small town. And as she moves there and she kind of goes to school and she starts making friends, she finds herself in a weird situation where she's attracted to a young man who has a history here and maybe grew up being told to act different ways, and maybe has a history of saying things and doing things, especially regarding Adam and this theater that Billy would frown upon. And there's this young girl, also small town, but very, again, punk rock, female empowerment, a lesbian, closeted, but to that end, who likes Billy. And so she's thrown into this mix where all these young teenage angsty dynamics and stuff, while she's also trying to navigate the loss of her family, and she's trying to navigate moving here with Adam and his own kind of internal homophobia, and trying to get him to understand that, hey, Steve is great, you should, why are you not living together, with the backdrop of this also being in the context of the aunt and uncle are getting ready to file legal proceedings because they don't think that their niece should be living with a gay man. And all of these different elements, right? They're playing together kind of in real life, bringing up some drama, really, really developing the tension. They really kind of come to a head when, again, folks like us, we're probably thinking, what would be cooler than getting to go live with / adopted by these really amazing people who own a film, who own a movie tavern, right? That they show classic films, and you can just go in and you can watch anything, right? Like they have the full collection of like Andy Warhol films. They everything that was awesome in the 60s, 70s and 80s. You can watch Pretty in Pink if you want to. And so she kind of was like, this is amazing, right? This is art. And I get to be this really high school film person, but I am in a high school where there's no GSA, but I know what I'll do, right? I'll start a film club at the school, right? And of course, what she shows, of all the movies that she could show to the young, mostly white students of liberal Kansas high school, is Andy Warhol's Trash, which, if you've seen, is probably not going to go over. It's basically porn. I think there's gratuitous fellatio in it. And that's what she shows. And of course, it starts the uproar, and parents find out, and they start messaging the Heritage Foundation. Literally, what I love about this is Robert Mailer Anderson is not afraid about naming names. Like, he is calling out real people who would do these things. And they're doing the whole boycott, right? They're going to run these folks out of town. They're going to ruin their business. They're going to shut them down. They're attacking them verbally, physically. Of course, the whole time I'm reading this morning, I'm thinking about the absolutely horrific thing that just happened in Texas, where I think probably famously the voice actor from King of the Hill was murdered in his front yard, standing next to his trans husband, being called the F-bomb by an angry neighbor, right? Like, that's in the back of my head while I'm thinking about this, and in the context of while I'm reading this. And they have to, there's this whole moment of just like, everybody has this moment of just not clarity, but just like if I'm being treated like this, making all the concessions that I make, then why the fuck am I making concessions? And they just start fighting back together, right? They start pushing back and just kind of have this moment where, no, we're going to watch this, and the closeted kid's going to apologize for doing things that she should not have done, and the kid who has a crush on her, who is just a straight boy, is going to realize, hey, I was a dick, and I don't have to be. And there's all of these moments where the couples are just going to do that. Live their life, and they're claiming their space. And I thought that was very, very powerful in the way they did it, especially because the story, quite frankly, doesn't have a resolution, which I thought was very interesting. They set up all of this tension. They set up all, is this young girl going to get forced by the courts to go live with her family? Is the theater going to be saved? Are these people going to be able to live together? This gay couple, are they going to be successful and are going to be able to make a living in this small town? And you don't know at the end of the story. It leaves it very open-ended. And I thought that was an incredible move because, number one, it does leave room for a sequel. But even if they don't, I would not be surprised if they don't. Like, it is a very interesting story trope where they're going to set this all up. And what happens, we may not ever know because that's life, right? That's messy. And that's sometimes there's not a conclusion to these moments that ties it up. I just think the story is phenomenal. The art style, John Sack is just really great. It kind of has this Charles Burns vibe. It's not a copycat of Charles Burns by any means. I mean, it's different, but it's very much in that vein of Charles Burns work, which I think is that school of line, which I love. So all in all, this is a win, man. You're gonna have to impress the fuck out of me to knock this out of my top 10 list for the year. I highly recommend this. It is not being talked about enough. This is phenomenal. This is good storytelling. Like just all in all, like I loved every single thing about this.
Caleb, can you give me a sense of when this came out? Because I was looking into getting a copy, and I was shocked to find that there are some used copies already that are really affordable. I was just wondering if you had a framework of when this came out.
Yeah, I got it in my DCBS. I did order from DCBS. I got it in for DCBS this week, so okay. It can't be that old. I'm looking for the. Okay. Let me see if I can find the copyright.
On sale, it came out a year ago. May was when it was first released. Was this the paperback? I guess.
Yeah, I've got the paperback. So maybe this was a reprint that I saw. Just like they were.
Well, Fantagraphics always, recycles their solicitation, so that could be where that is.
So yeah, I missed this apparently when it was first issued, but I was thinking it was relatively new, but apparently it's a year old, but still.
Well, I mean, it's still new.
It's still new, yeah.
But no, this just let's see, 2024.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
So
nice.
But go grab this.
I
read this. It's worth if you pay full price, it's worth the $25 you're going to spend.
Oh yeah. Well, when you were saying it's got a very Charles Burns vibe, at least with the art, I do see it here, especially in this. Looking at the close up the different faces. There's a sort of semi-realism that goes into creating the expressions on people's faces, how they're presented, what they look like, clothing, everything. It's just there's very much that style that's very instantly recognizable as like Charles Burns or
the sneer. So in the image you're showing right now, the sneer on the young woman to the right, like that's very Charles Burns. And there's a kind of a spread in this one of Molly Ringwald. It's that scene where she's crying. And it's very just how Charles Burns does this thing when he's doing shadows. He does these kind of curled points or curled peaks, especially on a jawline. That's in there, and I just thought that was a great flourish.
Also, and Burns is known for doing a lot of film, film scenes. So he'll completely recreate as closely as possible. Almost photographic realism, but with obviously that artist's touch to show it is a comic strip interpretation of that scene. But he does the same thing. I think that's really a great comparison here. Not that it's a copycat at all.
No,
people
it's
can have
unique. It is
similar
different,
styles.
but it's just in that school, though,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah, definitely.
you know, so.
But it's cool. I need to pick this up because I again didn't know about this one. So
Okay, so I was wrong about this being a new book. Obviously, I'll own that. I'll eat that. That shows how little I'm paying attention to dates and stuff like that.
It's new to
I get
you.
my books in. I
new to
read
you.
it. That's just what I do now, which is legitimately a huge change. If you've known me for the past 5 years, I mean, my reading habits and the way I buy things has shifted. I was very much a Wednesday warrior for years, and that is no longer the case. Mainly, a lot of the stuff that we were just talking about with shipping and things like that changed, and just the way I work and everything else. But there is a brand new book that I know did just come out this week, and is now in my hands, and that is this little gem, Muybridge, written and drawn by I don't know if this is how Guy Delisle is how I pronounce it.
Guy Delisle.
Guy Delisle. See,
Guy Delisle.
that was not way off. My bad. Guy Delisle is who drawn this. Now, I'm a fan of Guy Delisle. Love several of his books. Hostage is my favorite thing that he's done, and it is a deeply impactful book, and it's just it makes you just wiggle in your seats out of discomfort when you read it. I thought that was great. But what Muybridge is it kind of in the same vein of what he's taking a real thing, right? He's taken this real event, this real person, and is effectively writing a biography. It's fiction, narrative fiction to some degree. I'm sure there are parts that are embellished in this just to kind of flesh it out and give things texture and flavor, but for the most part, I've looked stuff up and it's very much on point. And what this story is about, there was once upon a time a man named Edward Muybridge, and he was a very early burgeoning photographer. At the time when photography was just kind of being invented, and these are the big boxes that people carried around, and a lot of times you'd have to make people stand very still for a very long time just to get the exposure right. And throughout this, Mr. Muybridge went through and he had to invent things to get better pictures. He took some very famous photos of Yosemite that are still iconic today. And he had this sense of both entrepreneurship and inventiveness that really a lot of things that we think of with photography today can be credited back to his work and the different things that he invented. But if I were to ask you what a horse in the early or late in the 1800s, what a horse had to do with bullet time in the Matrix, off the top of your head, would you be able to draw that that byline through history?
Well, both were involving Keanu Reeves aspect, right? He's immortal, right?
No, the answer is at once upon a time, before photography, no one actually knew how horses ran. They did not, and I'm not joking, they did not understand. And if you look at old medieval photos where horses are like in motion, supposedly it looks awkward and weird because no one actually knew how they ran. And there were all of these legitimate studies and these people, especially for horse breeders, who would try to tell you how they ran, but there was never a way to capture it, and it's moving too fast for the eye. And so you would have people who would speculate that there was never a moment in time where a horse did not have one foot on the ground, right? There was never a moment in time where they were midair, right? And then you had people say, no, that doesn't work. In order to do that, they have to, right? There's got to be a point where the horse is not touching the ground. But how can this 1,000-pound creature, 1,200-pound creature do that, right? And no one knew. And it was a very big deal, right? This was something that was, again, like people were trying to figure out how it works. And as Mr. Muybridge is going through his life and his career developing still photography and in fact developing different processes to develop film, different ways to do exposure, the science behind getting that image to stay on the film, he is developing what would inevitably lead to the ability to capture images like bullet time, which you see in the Matrix. And that's where that byline comes from. And this all kind of culminates to this moment to where He's really afraid that his career is kind of over at some point, that, you know, he's just going to kind of be this forgotten photographer because of mass production, and everybody's just kind of tired of looking at still life stuff. And so he starts trying to find a gimmick. Well, and he realizes that, hey, if we move certain still images at a certain speed, you know, it's going to look like it's in motion. You know, this book does something really cool from a practical aspect. If you look at the margins and you start flipping through there's like dots, and you can start seeing images of things moving. And he starts realizing this. And so he starts traveling around with this and showing people, if I do these different things, this catches the eye of a philanthropist, right? This billionaire, well, at the time, probably a millionaire would be more accurate to say, billionaire in today's terms, but this millionaire guy who very well known, very well to do, very powerful railroad person who also raises horses and is a breeder. And one of the things that he is really looking at is he wants to be the person to figure out just how a horse runs, because that's going to help him learn how to breed better horses. They'll understand the anatomy more, right? And so he contracts with Mr. Muybridge, and he tells him, hey, look, you come live here. I'm going to give you money. I'm going to give you time and a crew. I need you to find a way to take a picture in a split second. Again, we talked about how in early photography that was not the case. You could not let people move. You had to let the exposure sit for a long time. I'm going to give you the ability to capture this in a split second. And they kept trying, and they kept failing, and they kept trying, and they kept failing. And even though they would take these pictures that were close enough in sequence, they were always blurry, until one day Muybridge has this epiphany, and he's like, I can use electricity. I can use electricity as a trigger to pop off different cameras at different times using this kind of, and it all came from the idea when he was basically thinking about the way that you can take stills and spin them and set them up in a circle. And he looked at it and he goes, well, why can't I do that with multiple cameras? And so he develops a thing where there's going to be tripwires connected to the horse, you know, where they'll trigger something. And originally it doesn't work because the horse, they're too tight. They're not going in sequence and things like that. But eventually, as history shows us, he finally figured it out. And the images that he took of the horse running and the development of the film and just the mechanics of how he made this work are now still used in drawing books today. If you go out and find some of the most famous books on drawing, they will use these photographs where he shows you the progression of a horse running. And he did it with a dog. He did it started doing with all kinds of animals. And then he started doing it in nature with other things. And lo and behold, this is the technology that would eventually lead the Wachowskis to give us bullet time and the way that we have functional photography today, where we can get those circular views and everything. And he did that as well. He showed people how I can take your picture and give you this 3D dimension. In a lot of ways, he was a bitter, sad man. He was up in years before he ever got married. His wife ended up possibly cheating on him with another person who he was close to, who may or may not have impregnated her, and he just, went on a murder rampage. And so he did not have the sad end, but he maybe had wanted, but he was obsessed with work too. I think you can't overlook that. This was not a time where he was being nice to the person that he married. Was very driven by his craft and technology and wanting to capture and be known. He showed his work at the World's Fair in Chicago. That gave people just a lot of images to see and to show people the technology. Again, very early 30s, I think, is when it was this kind of famous World Fair. And so that's where all of this stuff debuts, right? And so he did have some notoriety. He was known, and is very important to everything that we do and know of today. We have cell phones that take pictures today based on still technology and flash images that would not exist had it not been for him. We watch movies with techniques that would not exist had it not been for him. We understand anatomy and motion and movement in still art, right? In comics and stuff, because of the work this guy did. So I love that Guy Delisle, if I'm pronouncing that right, showcase this very important figure. Once you see it, you know who he is, but I had no idea who he was. It's a fantastic work, great biography. If you're looking for a biography, go check this out. It's good stuff.
Yeah, I don't know anything about Muybridge, but I am very familiar with a lot of the series of photographs that he did. It's stuff that we did, when I was studying film. That's kind of, you see those plastered everywhere in early film, history, early film books. Just looking at what came first. So like, the penny arcades where you could actually see a whole bunch of these types of films, these short films that were basically just, series of photographs that were put together in ways where you could see something very interesting, like a horse moving or, people actually in motion. Stony Williams has joined us. What's up, party people? Hello, Stony. That's really interesting. And Guy's style is just so much fun. He makes history and geography and moments in time really fun to read. I haven't read any of his personal biographies. This sounds like just one.
Oh, that's funny because that's all I've read is his personal stuff.
I've read Pyongyang. I've read.
Well, that's him. He's the lead character in that.
Well, yeah, but it's about his experience.
That's what I'm talking about.
But having a biography about a person, like another person, not a memoir type. Which I love memoir.
I've read that.
Shenzhen,
Shenzhen. Those are the two that I've read.
Yeah. Like I said, hostages for me, it's the best thing that he did. Just the fact that this guy I was just flipping through again, he showcased his work next to both Edison and Tesla. Like they were all kind of, and he worked with them. I thought that was just really cool.
Yeah, I'm sure Edison stole everything that he was working on too.
And speaking of movies, did you guys know that as a result of the North Korean hack, that put the kibosh on a film version of Pyongyang, which would have had Steve Carell as Guy Delisle, that was 7 weeks away from principal shooting?
Oh,
that sucks.
That sucks. Yeah,
that sucks a lot.
Because that would have been really interesting to see. But no, that's cool. I was not aware that he had a new book out, so I will be keeping an eye out for that.
From what I understand, though, there's a lot of his work isn't translated yet.
Yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised.
There's a lot. He's very prolific, but there really is a good amount of his work that hasn't that he hasn't authorized for translation yet. So,
speaking of, this was translated by Helge Dasher and Rob Aspinall. So give them some shout out for doing it. But I just like this guy is the reason we're able to capture still images of motion. I just think that's cool, right? And we get an amazing biographical comic from Guy, who I'm going to now pronounce his name correctly.
I definitely will need to look up more of what he did. I wasn't aware that a lot was not translated, so I will definitely check out those, because I think D&Q is publishing the English versions, right? I don't think they would publish any of the French ones. Maybe Hachette or something like that. I'll take a look, because I'm interested. Now I'm intrigued.
Yeah. We need to befriend a French bear who can go buy us bande dessinée and just mail it to us.
Or you could just, buy them from Canada.
Also that. I need a Canadian bear.
But a French bear friend would be fun too.
Yeah.
Oui.
This one has been published in Brazil, says James. I think it might jump to the front of the to buy, the line after Caleb's fully endorsement.
I don't think it'll disappoint you, especially for you. Like, if you're a visual artist, right? I think this is a cool book for you to look at, because this is a visual artist giving you an interpretation of the process of making some of the actual photos that were the foundation for visual art books. And I think that's the images of motion, right? He was controversial because he would, and this is in the late 1800s, right? Like, he died in 1903. I think I was looking at something a while ago. He was taking photographs of nude people of all different shapes, sizes, colors, and varieties at a time that was very not kind of, just, the idea of naked people is just were dirty and nasty. And if you showed a woman's ankles, you were just going to hell. And he was taking pictures of nude folks. So shout out to the Godfather of porn, I guess. I don't know, but
I mean, it wasn't for that reason. It was obviously very scientific, but also artistic. Like how do people actually move? How do muscles? How can you capture something to study it? Rather than just having somebody like stand there and like move their arm a dozen thousand times or whatever.
claim to fame.
Steve, we're at 11 p.m., so I think
we
still have 2 books to get to. So even if they're a bit abbreviated on our parts, I think we should get moving on to that.
Yeah, no problem. I'll jump onto mine real quick. And it's one that I've actually been looking forward to reading for a very long time. I first met Kayla E at HeroesCon a couple years ago now, when she was still working on, putting the book together. Had a lot of individual comics, and I do have pretty much everything that she's put out as individual books and booklets and zines. And it's a very interesting style, and it's also very, very serious subject matter. That I absolutely just really felt so grateful that I got to hear her talk about her experience, but also the experience of putting this out and putting her thoughts, her emotions into this work. And Kayla works for Fantagraphics, and Fantagraphics actually is putting this book out. It just came out within the past month or so, and it is Precious Rubbish. Now, the Precious Rubbish, what she's been doing, these strips that she's been putting out for a long time, depict in, herself, her family, in very, very almost absurdist, but also in a classic comic strip style. So a very, first half of the century style of, strip comics. So the characters are, posed in a certain way. They react in certain ways. They have a very specific look to them, but are in extremely difficult, dire circumstances. This is autobiographical, and it's, very emotional and absurdist in a way. There's a lot in here that doesn't look possible, doesn't seem possible, and of course is interpreted in a way that's very very unique. But the book itself has many different styles that she presents the stuff. So it's very graphic art, and a very graphic design, where she depicts certain moments of her childhood, of her teenage life, and beyond, interacting with her abusive mother, her abusive father, her brother, and also very directly confronting her alcoholism that started at a very young age. The abuse, both sexual as well as physical and emotional, that she had experienced over the many years, including being a caretaker for her mother, that kind of emotional hostage situation that she was in as well. And it addresses that very directly. Conclusions and resolutions, you don't see that here. I mean, this is a work in progress. This is a very visceral, internal, series of memories and thoughts and, feelings on the page. And interestingly enough, she also breaks that up with things that could be a little bit funny and a little bit, kind of like weird and wacky, like the little Kayla paper dolls. She has one for her mother as well, as an old woman, that's very disturbing, but also kind of kooky. There's a lot of advertisements that she puts in here, like old style advertisements that you would see in like a women's magazine, in the 50s or in the 40s. That address all sorts of things like eating disorders and alcoholism and abuse and, self-deprecation and depression and all these things that are kind of presented in an almost funny way. And so you can laugh at it, but at the same time, you also, can understand this is a very raw presentation of one's emotional state and one's mental state on the page. Gorgeous book. Really, really beautiful book. There's some things I can't really show because they are a little bit too disturbing. So, keep that in mind to go into this with a very serious mindset, and also be prepared to sit with this for some time. But I'm absolutely overjoyed that I was able to read it and get a copy that I had actually pre-ordered last year. So it came in as soon as it was available. But it's a beautiful book, and really, kudos to her for being able to bring this out.
Yeah, Steve, can I see that
yeah.
format? Because I know she's had a big variety in terms of formats that she's had.
So this is the full book. Yeah, I mean, a lot of this has not been published before. So there's some that she has published before in different forms. But this entire book together, there's a lot of new material in this, and there's just a lot of material, period. And there's a lot of stuff in here that isn't found elsewhere, but she also has some other precious rubbish strips and booklets
I have
and things.
one of the
absolutely that is not in here. So if you have some of her other comics, like, they aren't in here necessarily. So
right.
But yeah, I mean, just activities for the kids that are pretty disturbing. Try to work your way through the through the maze in the garage to find the garbage, the bag of garbage that smells like human remains. That it's just, there's some dark humor in there, but it's also done in a very open and honest way. So
very cool.
There you go.
Have to check that out.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
Like those muted colors.
Yeah. Oh, but it's like simple colors, but extremely bold. Like the reds and the blues, like they just jump out at you. It's gorgeous paper, gorgeous art.
I forget the name of the artist, but he's designed a couple of album covers. The one that immediately comes to mind is Ricky Lee Jones' Pop Pop, and take a look, because it immediately reminds me of that particular style, but she seems a lot more nuanced than his stuff, which is
like maybe Nancy, like
Cracker Jack,
yes. Yeah. I mean that's what Popeye as well.
Yeah.
There's a lot of Popeye,
Bazooka Joe, graphic. Yeah. Okay, cool.
Cool.
All right. I have another book to talk about. It's a very it's an artist it's a writer I've consistently talked about on this show before, but this is something incredibly different from him. So this is the first issue of Vanishing Point, which is a science fiction anthology series written by Mark Russell with a rotating series of artists. In the first issue here, we have Juan. However, Juan did not do the main cover. This cover is by Christian Ward. And this is very different from Mark Russell's stuff. You don't have that biting, acerbic humor. This is much more straightforward storytelling. And I think because you're so used to that particular dynamic from Russell, you're almost waiting for it to kick in somewhere, and it never does. And it's really refreshing to see an established writer, who is known for one particular style, flexing different muscles. And I did not know going into this that this was an anthology series, and I think I enjoyed it more because I finished the issue and I thought, God, where do they go? Because this seems like a full story. And then I looked closer into it, and hey, it's a done in one. So what we have in this story in the first issue of Vanishing Point, it starts off in the year 2019. Let me just see if it actually has a title. Yes, it does. The title is Screams, and that makes a lot of sense. It initially starts in the year 2109, and you see this individual here, Jim, and he is going to be going off into space for 10 years. He's going to be leaving his family, but as he goes off into space doing particular rock mining activities, after that 10 years, he's going to be set for life and then some. So he's doing this for his family, but he's going to be away from them. So you see he has a wife and 2 kids, and with the ship that he has, a lot of it is very much run by AI. So basically, he's there if things go wrong. But they do a lot of the work. He's still integral to the mission, but in terms of the actual labor, that is through robotics. So we see him here. He's a fairly clean-cut guy. Steve, if you can go to the next graphic, and so you'll see here the ship that he is involved with, which I believe is called Carpenter, and you see him actually in some of the activities. The arms grab the rocks from asteroid belts and other formations within the universe, and then he mines them. And one good thing about this is if he meets his quota, he can go home early. So the 10-year trip might turn into a 5-year trip, which is, great for him because he's going to miss his kids growing up. Though there is video service that he can access. So, as I said, it starts out in the year 2109. We move to 2110, and Steve, if you can go to the next graphic, and he's a very different person already. He's a very different person already. He's much more hardened. Um, there's a lot of stuff going on that in his mind that he knows he is not dealing with well. And before he left, his wife was worried about Captain Ahab syndrome, which is, for sailors, it's a concept that it does something to you when you're away for a long time. You forget home, you forget why you were on this mission, and the only way that you're alive is while you're at sea. And space is a sea, effectively. So he's going through this, and there's a couple of mishaps that happen. He breaks his arm, and as a result of one particular mishap, the video system goes off. So he only has audio contact with the company and with his family. He ventures into an asteroid belt, and he's hit the gold rush. These are very fine rocks. These are this is exactly what you were hoping for if you were going mining. He's going to gather these together, but as he's gathering these things together, he's hearing screams, and he can't quite understand what's going on because this is just rock. He goes down to look, and he's just seeing rock. He's pulling them in, and the screams are getting louder the more and more consistently he's involved in this mining activity. There's a binary code that comes into the ship via radio communication, and the radio communication, once the system is able to read it, says, "Why are you killing us?" And he's concerned. It's weighing on him so heavily. He's just desperate to find what's going wrong. He does not see any sentient life in his activities, but he keeps going. And after a point, it's gotten to him, and he just can't hear this. He can't stand the screams anymore, which are filtered through the audio in the ship. So he's breaking the audio ship, the only contact he has with back home with the company that he's working for and with his wife and family. He does that. He's going to start the trip home, and the last page is a bit of a shocker. And this was a really, really, really excellent example of a storyteller that does something that you don't expect them to do. Because Mark Russell is one of my favorite writers. I basically read everything he does. This is completely different from anything else he's done. And in terms of the second story, I have to cover up the page here, but if you can just take a look here, Vanishing Point number 2 looks like it's going to be very different. It looks like it's going to be a very twisted take on the Jetsons in a story called The Tomorrow Family. And just in terms of creators doing, flexing different muscles, can you guys figure out, without me showing this, who this artist is?
I couldn't tell you. I would
No,
think somebody
not
like
from here.
This
like
is
a Franco
Robert,
maybe, or
This is Robert Hack.
Really?
really.
Yeah. So it looks like in the
Haven't heard that
covers they're
name in a
doing that
minute.
well. And also with the one thing I really have to commend here is Wando does pencils, inks, and colors. It's only lettering that he's farmed out, and the color scheme that are used here. Space is dark, but he's not afraid to use purple as a base color, and it totally works. So really good first issue, and I'm in. Especially, even if we do have the standard acerbic Mark Russell wit, that this shows me, there's other things this guy can do and do very, very well. So
yeah, when I think of Mark Russell, I don't necessarily think of cynical, but the way that you describe that, it seems like there's a lot of like cynicism being written.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why I was using acerbic, because I think cynicism. I think cynicism sometimes denotes, an attack on your main characters, and I've never felt he does that. I don't know what the actual textbook definition of cynicism is, but it seems that I always bring up the Waiting for Guffman analogy, because out of the Christopher Guest movies, Waiting for Guffman is actually my least favorite, because that's the one I feel where they're actually making fun of the people being depicted, where the others, it might be a twisted celebration, but they're celebrating them more in Best in Show and the other films. What I think with his general style is he falls in love with the characters, and he just has them operate, in their most sarcastic, and most what's a good transgressive way that he can. So
yeah. I don't know if you guys can hear it, but the cats have decided that they want to talk in the background.
Oh.
Aster especially, he's running around yelling at.
I think his favorite work of Mark Russell's The Second Coming, and he just
that's
I believe so. He wanted to make sure that he got that in.
Yeah.
Minerva's is a Flintstone girl.
Yeah.
She did not hear it, but she looked up. She's on like she can't hear it. It's all in my ears.
My girl.
All right. We've got a few minutes left, so we're going to start entering our final segments of the show. And the first of the final segments is where we show off our geek gets, things that we've gotten over the past 2 weeks that are somewhat geeky in format and outlook, and we show them off. It's a little bit of show and tell. So Steve, why don't you start us off if you have something?
So I do have something, and it is something that I kickstarted. Speaking of European artists, he is a Spanish artist, Polero, who is known for focusing on a certain aspect of the gay community that we love so much, the bear community, the big, beefy, big-bellied, etc. Image of man. And he put out a Kickstarter recently called The Big Book of Polero. Most of this I cannot show because it would get us booted. But it is gorgeous. It's fun. There's a playful nature to his art, and also very erotic at the same time. It's very, cartoony, but also very, very smutty. But it came with a whole bunch of really great things. So it came with a calendar, it came with several stickers that I can't show you. It came with a fake comic book cover, which was really fun. And several bookmarks, all sorts of great things. And a poster, because he is going to be exhibiting his art in an art museum in Spain, in Barcelona, I believe, this summer. So that's going to be available, the art of Polero there. So if you were in Barcelona this summer, go check it out. But the Big Book of Polero, I'm sure this is something that can be found outside of Kickstarter, but I'm happy that I helped back it to get it, because it is awesome.
All right. Cool. Over to Caleb. Caleb, what do you have in terms of geek gets?
So I also have a book for my geek get, and I got a book in this week that I was super excited about, because it's going to be something different, and it's kind of encyclopedic, and I'm on like a history real life kick. And also, I don't know if you remember, a few years ago, there was a book called Flapper Queens that came out that was all about these depictions of like 1920s women drawn by women, the stuff like that. So I've gotten very into I love those books. Well, this came out this week. It is I don't know what you call it, part comic, part encyclopedia, part biography, part just memoir. I don't know, but it's called Tell Me the Story Where the Bad Girl Wins. It's about the life and art of Barbara Sherman. It's written by Caitlin McGurk, but Barbara Sherman was a cartoonist who had a lot of work published in the New Yorker, which is about all I know about her at this point. Again, I really loved learning about who drew these images that we saw and who were in these, kind of some of the names that weren't widely known. And so I picked this up on a whim, and I have not read it yet, but that's my geek get. I'm really excited about that. And she's chunky, right? She's a thick book. And so I'm ready to get into this, but I don't know if you can. Over on my shelf, I've got like this 2-volume tome of New Yorker cartoons. Flipped through one the other day. There's stuff by her in those, so really excited to see it. And then, just Bill, you mentioned earlier the importance of style, the importance of understanding fashion in comics and stuff like that, especially about with the X-Men and stuff like that. That's really all this is, right? This is an illustrative depiction of the fashion of a particular time. As told in the New Yorker, so you get a lot of like social commentary with it as well. But stoked to finally at some point gonna read into this. And like I said, it's texty. This is not so there's some reading to be done. But go check this out if you're looking for historical fiction.
Very cool. Okay, we're entering the summer of Superman, and that's where my head is at. So I'm not going to go that crazy in terms of the toys. I've already pre-ordered the entire Superpowers line. There's probably going to be a few crypto stuff here and there that I'm going to pick up. But as of right now, and you can play this as Exhibit A when I go bankrupt before the summer's over. As of right now, I'm not going to be buying a lot of the Spin Master stuff, because it's nice, but I'm dedicating funds elsewhere. But I did pick up this really cute Heroes and Villains set of like 2.5-inch figures. I guess the best comparison would be like the very small page punchers that McFarlane puts out. So it's a 5-character set of Robot Number 4, Mrs. Terrific, Superman, DC's Ultraman, as they have to bill him, and the Engineer. And there are other series out there. McFarlane has a deluxe line that's going to be out there. As I mentioned, there's Superpowers, which are going to be here hopefully on Monday and then on Wednesday, if the shipping if the shipping information is correct. But I also got some archival Superman stuff. Now these are just little bits to pick up, but I got still sealed packs of the top Superman 2 and the Superman 3 cards from the 1980s. And one really cool thing is I have a Superman the movie pack and I have a Supergirl pack. There wasn't a card series for Superman 4, so now I have a full set of the unsealed packs. But the main
but is the gum still good to chew? That's the question.
That would scare the shit out of me doing that. But the main get I want to talk about, and this is a mystery to me why I never got a replacement copy. About a year and a half ago, I got a copy of a book by writer Nicholas Schaffner that it was about the Beatles. It's called Beatles Forever. It came out in, I want to say like 78, 79 or so. Really excellent book. Completely dated, but just really tapped into why the Beatles hit in the zeitgeist when other groups didn't. So I got that from my friend Glenn Pavan, who was in KCDC. And Shafter put out another book, and this is it. This is the British invasion, and he covers what he feels were the 7 most important groups to emerge from 64 onward from England. Should say acts: the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, the Who, the Kinks, Pink Floyd, T-Rex, and David Bowie. And then there's a back section here which lists 100 other acts that he felt were of significant importance. And this book introduced me to a lot of music that I don't think, as a 13-year-old kid in the suburbs of New Jersey, I would have had a necessarily easy pipeline to. Acts like Bebop Deluxe and Family and Tom Robinson Band, just to get a gay tip of the hat in there. And Schaffner died of AIDS in 1991. And about 2 years after his death, I found out we actually had a mutual friend. And I really wish I could have, somehow communicated with him and just told him how, deeply important that these books were to my upbringing as a music fan. They were critical. My original copy of this just fell apart in my hands after a point. I mean, it was held together with tape. Everything was, there was highlighting left and right. So why it took me decades to get a replacement book of one of my favorite books, I don't know, but I finally did. So The British Invasion by Nicholas Schaffner. And if you want to search out both this and The Beatles Forever by Nicholas Schaffner, he also has a Pink Floyd book, but they're not my jam. I would seriously suggest you reach out. It's great rock music writing. So that's
Cool.
me. Yeah.
We'll take you to McKay's and see if there's any more.
This is
interesting
totally the
rock
kind of
books.
thing you would find at McKay's.
Oh yeah,
This is totally. I mean,
I think the last time you were there, you found a bunch of.
I found
books.
one of the rockier books.
Oh yeah,
that were in the 80s, which I have copies of. They're battered, some of them. So for the McKay's price, yeah, I'm gonna pick it up.
Oh yeah,
and I got that. It's actually right here. The Beatles Are Coming book. That awesome book about Beatles 64, the actual invasion.
oh yeah.
Really good stuff. All right, well, we're wrapping this show up, and when we wrap an episode of the Comic Book Bears up, we do so with a segment we call the Woofs of the Week. In the bear community, if you find a fellow attractive, you woof at him, and we do something very similar to that. We woof at something which may be comic book or comic book related, or it may also be a film or a TV program or a charitable initiative, anything under the sun that we think you, fair listener or viewer, may be interested in sampling. I'll start, as I always do, with Steve. Steve, what is your woof of the week?
Well, my woof of the week goes out to the Monday Screen Unseen that I saw this week. At AMC. It was an unknown picture. AMC does this, every couple of weeks. They'll have a, mystery movie that, usually comes at a discounted ticket price. But you don't know what it is going in. There's always a lot of speculation before you go in. There's whole Reddit sites that are devoted to guessing which movie is going to be shown based on the release dates and the running time and all that stuff. Well, I was pleasantly surprised. I had kind of guessed it, and I guessed right, and it was the movie The Life of Chuck. And oh my God, it was good. It was very good. I can't even tell you the plot of this movie because that would ruin it. You have to go in and watch it. If you're a fan of Mike Flanagan, who's known for a lot more visceral horror than he is, moving, emotional and very personal work like this. It's also based on a Stephen King short story, which again, usually a lot more violent and horrifying. But this kind of goes along with a lot of his more serious work. So there is obviously a supernatural element to this that does factor in at actually a much later point in the film. But the way it starts off is very different from how it ends, but it's all connected and it's really just wonderful. The acting in this is great. Tom Hiddleston as the adult Chuck. You've got Chiwetel Ejiofor. You've got Karen Gillan, who put in an amazing performances. Mark Hamill as his grandfather puts in an amazing performance. Mia Sara back on the screen, looking gorgeous as ever. And just is riveting in her scenes. You just fall in love with her all over again, like you did when you probably first saw Ferris Bueller Can't Lose. Ferris Bueller's Day Off. So Ferris Bueller Can't Lose. Parker Lewis stays off.
Let me
there
tell
we go.
I think she turned a few straight boys, a few gay boys straight for
Oh,
at least the running time of that movie.
she's I mean she's just wonderful in this, and her part is so integral and important. But there's also, you'll see lots of cameos from people that work with Mike Flanagan a lot. From the
And
House
also-
of Usher and other things.
She was the first live action Harley Quinn
Really, that's interesting.
in Birds of Prey in the TV series.
Oh, that's
yeah.
right. I
Yeah.
forgot about
Well,
that.
yeah, I
Yeah.
that TV series is just kind of like
That is it is so 2000s.
Oh yeah.
yes.
I actually
But
have the because it was only one season or something, right?
Just
Like,
one season.
13 episodes.
I
13
have
episodes.
that on DVD or Blu-ray. So
Wouldn't surprise me, because I think it was one that did sell a lot better in DVD than people were expecting. But anyway,
Well,
this movie,
I
Life of
think
Chuck-
that was one of those like of freaks and geeks situation where it wasn't being rerun anywhere,
Mhm.
and it was only bootlegs that were available, so that when the system, it sold very well. I think it
Yeah.
sold like Smallville level
yeah,
in terms of numbers.
or as much
yeah.
as it could, because there was only the one season, but it did
Yeah.
it did pretty well. But anyway, Life of Chuck does come out nationwide on, I believe, the 13th, which is a week from tomorrow. It is released in major markets on June 6th, but most of the country will have to wait until the 13th to watch
So
it.
the blind
Unless you saw it at the
viewing,
mystery screening.
So with the blind viewing, they show it's all newer films, and that's part of the mystery of people don't know what it is. Okay,
It's a film that has.
I was wondering how you figured out what they were going to show. I mean, in the history of films, is like how do you speculate?
So you basically, and there's whole Reddit groups about this. You basically go from what are the major films that are coming up. Sometimes they'll state which studio it's from, so then that gives you like a limited number of like, okay, well, what are they putting out this summer?
Yeah.
What are they putting out the next couple months?
So
And
the
then
actual
also
movie will
runtime.
say this is a new A24 film, or
Yeah, they might say that
Okay.
sometimes. They'll also have the rating. So, like, if
Okay.
you pay attention to that, which I almost never do anymore, they'll have that. But also runtime. But the runtime is always fudged a little bit. So it's between 7 or 20 minutes different from the actual runtime of the movie. So it kind of gives you a little bit of a wiggle room to kind of figure out, well, it could be any number of these 5 or these 10. But yeah, it's pretty good. And then they have like a sister version of this Screen Unseen called Scream Unseen, at least to AMC, where it's a horror movie that's coming up. And a couple weeks ago, I saw Bring Her Back before it was released, and oh boy, it was good, but never watch again.
all right, over to
Life of
Caleb.
Chuck, I'll be watching.
Yep.
I'll be watching over and over again because it's
All right, over to Caleb. Caleb, what is your wolf of the week?
So my wolf of the week goes out to a documentary that's currently in production, and I'm excited about this. Can't wait to see it. And it comes from our good friend, collectively ours, Zach Crucy. For those of you who know the documentary, or for those of you who know Zach, Zach wrote one of the, in my opinion, one of the most important books about Steve Ditko in the last 10 years, has dedicated his whole life to knowing this. Well, he ended up teaming up with some people, by the way, has some stuff happening. I'm not sure what's public and what's not because we talk. So I'm not going to say. But what is going to come out and what I know I can talk about is this documentary that Zach is both writing and producing and just making, directing. And that's a documentary about Steve Ditko. And Zach has had full access to the Ditko archives. If you know Zach, he works very closely with Steve Ditko's living brother to get a full picture of this. Like Zach has insights to this man and his life that I don't like. If you are dedicating your life to studying somebody, Zach is doing it the right way. He knows so many people who knew him personally, closely. Like he is able to get an inside feel about the thoughts and the psychology and the inner being of who Steve Ditko was without actually having Steve Ditko there. And so I cannot wait to see this. I think it is going to really change the way that history thinks about Steve Ditko, or hopefully put it on a bigger scale. And again, if you haven't read Zach's book, Mysterious Travelers, you need to go do that. It is It is an amazing book. I say that as somebody who really likes reading scholarship type stuff, which it very much is. Lots of footnotes to this, but cannot wait to see this. Like I said, I know it's being handled with love. This is quite literally an act of love being produced into film, and I cannot wait to see it. I'm very excited for my friend.
Our friend.
Awesome.
Our friend. I'm very excited for our friend.
Friend of the show.
You know, yeah, you know him before I did. I
Yeah.
know that.
Stop it.
I'm very excited for
My friend.
I'm very excited for our friend.
I'm in
I'll
that
tell you-
book, for God's sake. I get credited in that book, so shut up.
Well, I don't know if I'll tell you about something later with some of this stuff that's pretty cool. I got to do something pretty cool. I'll
And
tell you about it
I
after
just
the
want to make sure, isn't it his nephew that he's working with?
Well, it was. So he is working with his nephew, but I mean,
Yeah.
he has
I
interviewed.
know the brother is still alive, but I thought the nephew was the one that was kind of managing.
No,
stuff.
so Zach spends a lot of time with the brother.
Okay,
and,
cool.
and the brother will be so there's actually, if you go to ditco.net, there's actually some footage from the film, and you'll see Zach interviewing Steve Ditko's brother, and he says, you know, who is Steve Ditko? Is he the creator of Spider-Man? Well, to me, he's my brother, you know. So he's spending a lot of time that. So
Okay.
I can't wait to see it. Go to ditco.net, see what the cool stuff they're doing. This is exciting. Like, this is cool.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to stay on the documentary track in terms of my Wolf of the Week. And my Wolf of the Week goes out to the current documentary on HBO Max. Sorry. Yes, I said it right. HBO Max, right?
Yes, it is HBO Max again.
Okay, great. And that is the documentary Pee-wee as Himself. And it's a 2-part documentary. It began airing on May 23rd. I've already watched this in its entirety twice. 2-hour episodes, and it's directed by Matt Wolf, who directed a fantastic documentary called Recorder about Marilyn Stokes, who just taped hours and hours and hours, thousands of hours of television, and now her videotapes are in museums, and they may be the only record of local news and some other things that have happened. Great documentary that aired as, I think, part of American Experience. So I was excited given the name attached to this. But with Pee-wee as himself, as many people know, Paul Rubens, who played Pee-wee Herman, died in July of 2023. Various causes: respiratory failure, leukemia, metastatic lung cancer, a bunch of things that were all working against him. And he kept the cancer diagnosis quiet for 6 years. He didn't tell anybody except for 2 people he was very close with. And for the documentary, he sat down for 40 hours of interviews. And, you know, especially during Pride Month, I think this is a very important movie to watch, because he was someone who was in college, actually very out, very often in drag. And then when his career started becoming taking precedence in his taking a much more advanced degree of precedence in his life, he went back in the closet and really didn't come out until, I think, the second arrest in the early 2000s, where these were just some things that had to have been addressed. But it goes through his career, you know, what led to the development of Pee-wee Herman, you know, a lot of the stories around Pee-wee's Playhouse, what happened to him subsequent to the arrest in Sarasota, Florida, where he was playing with himself, allegedly playing with himself in a porno theater, and his, you know, how he basically continued working from that point. I mean, there were things I forgot. I totally forgot about the MTV award appearance. You got any jokes? You know, I totally forgot about that. And just a lot of things I never knew before. Like, I mean, his dad was pretty fucking macho. That was like, I mean, it's Steve like pinged me like the next day, and it's like, Pee-wee's dad could get it. And I was like, yeah.
Oh man, and you know,
and just amazing backstories with you know, what he was engaged in doing. And you know, and reading also about, you know, the depression that Matt Wolf, you know, is still going through. about this entire experience. I mean, it almost seems like there's a documentary there. Again, because he kept the cancer diagnosis so close, and this was, a year before he died. I think that was the last bit of filming. Though
Yeah.
he stayed in touch with him, and there is some audio from that, but it really is from the horse's mouth. And I'm glad he told that story before he wasn't able to. And it's also sad, with some of the other people involved, like Lynn Stewart, who are no longer with us as well, had their opportunity to talk about their experiences as part of the Pee Wee Herman history. So Pee Wee as himself, it's currently streaming on HBO Max, and that's my Wolf of the Week.
And I do have to recommend, if you watch this, I would recommend watching another documentary as a companion to that, and that is The World According to Allie Willis, because they were friends. They shared, actually, Allie's longtime girlfriend was also the production designer for Pee Wee's Playhouse.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of, that was a connection for them. But
and someone else who made justifications for staying in the closet.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Someone else who, through her entire career was in the closet up until maybe about the last 10 years of her life as well. And she, before she came out, and that affects a lot of the relationships that she had over the years. And they moved in very similar circles and were friends.
And also two Jewish Americans.
Yeah,
and
two Jewish American people with very
and nuances that go along with that particular life experience.
And a very particular aesthetic, very particular, eclectic taste in things. They're both hoarders. Like, I mean, these two people were, they were two sides of the same coin. And what's interesting is that since the documentary has been released for, My Life as Pee Wee, there's been a lot of additional footage related to both documentaries that has come out. Some additional interviews, some additional sound bites, things like that. So I recommend looking for those as well. If you really like this documentary series, if you've seen World According to Allie Willis, definitely just even more insight to these.
And let me just also throw out another recommendation while we're at it there for Recorder, the Marion Stokes Project, about people who are not following the chosen path, and the magic that can happen that comes out of that sometimes. So,
cool.
And Steve Ditko. Let's throw him in there. It's the new Fab Four of people that pass. I don't know.
Pee Wee, Allie, Marilyn, and
the real League of Extraordinary People.
And Terry Schiavo. And
Terry Schiavo. And Jessica from The Well.
Oh, now I'm going to be like Nick. All right. But yeah, like, Caleb, look for that clip, what they say about.
Oh, yeah, no, I will. Yeah, it's on the, it's going to happen.
What's dragging in the back of it. Oh, my God. I don't know how. It must have taken them an hour
to stop laughing, to be honest. It's just so good.
All right. We're going to wrap this up. Again, we're the Comic Book Bears podcast. You can find us on most of the podcatching platforms. Whether it be Spotify or Apple Podcasts, we're out on a majority of them. If you want to access us on the interwebs, or we appear on most of the social media sites as Comic Book Bears. On Facebook, we are Comic Book Bears Podcast. If you want to write to us, please do so by sending an email to comicbookbears@gmail.com. If you joined us through Facebook Live, thank you. If you joined us through YouTube, thank you. If you're watching us later on YouTube, thank you. Please like and subscribe. And if you enjoyed what you were enjoying, experiencing, please leave a review that hopefully is a thumbs up. So we'll see what form we take 2 weeks from today. It'll be interesting, but we'll be back with you. Though one will have a kind of saddy face, and the other two will probably be frantic with the tech concerns. But we'll be back with you in 2 weeks. And until that time, I'm Bill Zanowitz.
I'm Steve Morey.
I'm Caleb Alexander McKenzie.
If you're listening, you're going to hear a wolf and an explosion. We'll be back in 2 weeks. Take care,
everyone.